The Brotherhood of Steel. These guys are the poster boys of post-apocalyptic, cool, power armor knights hoarding insane technology. But their origin story isn't about heroic quests or noble ideals. It's about something much crazier. Captain Roger Maxson and his soldiers were stationed at Mariposa Military Base in October 2077, guarding what they thought was legitimate scientific research. When they discovered the West Tech scientists were testing the forced evolutionary virus on military prisoners, creating the first super mutants, Maxson's men executed the scientists and declared mutiny from the U.S. Army on October 20th. 3 days later, the bombs fell. Maxson led his soldiers and their families across the radioactive wasteland to the Lost Hills bunker, where the Brotherhood of Steel was born from the ashes of betrayal. The trauma of Mariposa became their founding dogma. They'd witnessed science and technology used to commit monstrous acts under government authority, so they concluded humanity couldn't be trusted with its own creations. Their mission became seizing and hoarding advanced technology to prevent another apocalypse, organized under a rigid hierarchy called the Chain That Binds, with elders ruling over paladins, knights, and scribes. But centuries of isolation tested their ideology, leading to a fundamental schism. The West Coast Brotherhood remained purist isolationists who viewed outsiders with suspicion and went to war with the expanding New California Republic. The East Coast chapter under Elder Lyons broke from tradition by actually helping people, dedicating themselves to protecting the capital wasteland from super mutants rather than just hoarding tech. This humanitarian shift was seen as heresy by the Western elders, and even caused a splinter group called the Brotherhood Outcasts. Arthur Maxson eventually unified the East Coast chapter under a new ideology that combined aggressive tech acquisition with the goal of protecting humanity by eliminating perceived threats like super mutants, feral ghouls, and synths. The Brotherhood's story is a cycle of ideological decay, schism, and violent reformation, JNS. They started as a reaction against the old world's sins, but that principle keeps being forced to adapt and rebuild in the face of new horrors. But if the Brotherhood represents a reaction against the old world's sins, the next faction is the unrepentant ghost of that world. The Enclave. These are the guys who actually started the nuclear war, and they're not sorry about it. The Enclave existed as a shadow government long before the bombs fell. Secret cabal of politicians, military leaders, and corporate executives who manipulated national policy from behind the scenes. They were intimately involved with Vault-Tec's Project Safehouse, but not to save people. Out of 122 vaults built, only 17 were genuine shelters. The rest were designed as laboratories to test humanity under extreme conditions. The Fallout TV series reveals that Vault-Tec, working with the Enclave and other corporations, likely triggered the Great War themselves. By ensuring nuclear holocaust, they could eliminate corporate rivals and begin rebuilding society with their hand-picked executives emerging from cryosleep to manage the new world. When the bombs fell, the Enclave's leadership retreated to the Poseidon oil rig off California's coast. Cut off from the world for over a century, their ideology festered into fanatical belief in genetic purity. They saw every surface survivor as a mutant, unworthy of life, and themselves as the last true humans. Under President Dick Richardson, they developed FEV-Curling-13, an airborne bioweapon designed to kill anyone with minor mutations by releasing it into the jet stream and wiping out all life except themselves. Their ultimate weapon was Frank Horrigan, a Secret Service agent exposed to FEV during Mariposa excavations. Instead of killing him, they spent 2 years turning him into a cybernetically enhanced super mutant in power armor. The irony is perfect. This pure human organization's greatest champion was himself a mutant, but the brainwashing was so complete that Horrigan never saw the contradiction. The Chosen Ones stopped their genocidal plan in 2242 by destroying the oil rig, but survivors fled east to Raven Rock in the capital wasteland. Here they fell under President John Henry Eden, secretly a computer programmed with past presidents' personalities. The East Coast Enclave was split between Eden wanting to complete the genocide using Project Purity's water purifier, and Colonel Autumn wanting to use clean water as a tool of coercion to rebuild an authoritarian empire. While the Enclave clung to fascist visions of the old world, the next faction tried to rebuild it democratically. The New California Republic. The NCR started as the most hopeful experiment in post-war democracy, and grew into the largest nation in the wasteland, only to discover that rebuilding the old world means inheriting its problems too. They began in Shady Sands, founded by Vault 15 survivors, and under leaders like Aradesh and his daughter Tandy, these settlements unified in 2189 to form a federal republic based on pre-war democratic principles. Over the next century, the NCR became a massive success story, bringing law, order, and representation back to the wasteland. But success bred its own problems. classic imperial overreach, where territory and ambitions expanded faster than their ability to govern. Their push into the Mojave wasn't driven by idealism but desperate need for Hoover Dam's power and water. This expansion put them in conflict with everyone. They fought a brutal war with their former Brotherhood allies over technology control. Their aggressive annexation and high taxes alienated locals, and their campaign against the Great Khans led to the Bitter Springs Massacre, where NCR soldiers acting on bad intelligence slaughtered tribal non-combatants, including women and children. The Mojave became their Vietnam Mine, a costly, unpopular war with stretched supply lines, low morale among conscripted troops, and waning political support back home. Their main enemy was Caesar's Legion, and while they won the First Battle of Hoover Dam in 2277 by trapping Legion forces at Boulder City with explosives, it was a Pyrrhic victory with heavy casualties. The Fallout TV series reveals the NCR's ultimate fate, 2020. Their capital, Shady Sands, was completely destroyed by a nuclear bomb, orchestrated by a Vault-Tec executive to eliminate a rival power. The NCR proves that simply rebuilding what was lost isn't enough, because the seeds of apocalypse were always present in the old world systems. Their war with the Legion over Hoover Dam was essentially a resource conflict, the same kind that led to the original Great War. But if the NCR tried to rebuild the old world, the next faction wanted to burn it away completely. Caesar's Legion, standing in brutal opposition to the NCR, is a totalitarian slave army modeled on the Roman Empire, built on conquest, cruelty, and one man's terrifying philosophy. Edward Sallow was originally a member of the humanitarian followers of the Apocalypse, sent in 2246 to study tribal dialects in Arizona with Mormon missionary Joshua Graham. When their expedition was captured by the failing Blackfoot tribe, Sallow saw opportunity. Using historical texts he'd studied, he taught them warfare, discipline, tactics, and total conquest, transforming them from scattered tribe into ruthless army. Sallow became Caesar and led a campaign absorbing 86 tribes into a single culture where all old identities were erased. Caesar's philosophy directly responds to what he sees as the old world's failures and the NCR's weaknesses. He believes democracy is weak, individualism is disease, and the NCR's reliance on pre-war ideals makes them corrupt and doomed to repeat the mistakes that caused the Great War. His solution is brutal social engineering. 1905, a patriarchal slave state where individuality is suppressed, women are property, advanced medicine is forbidden, and failure means crucifixion. Yet, within Legion borders, they enforce brutal peace. Their lands are the safest in the wasteland for traders because raiders and criminals are ruthlessly exterminated. Key figures include Joshua Graham, the co-founder who became the legendary Burned Man after Caesar had him covered in pitch, set ablaze, and thrown into the Grand Canyon as punishment for tactical failure at Hoover Dam. His replacement, Legate Lanius, embodies pure brutality as the Legion's bloody fist. Caesar describes his conflict with the NCR as a Hegelian dialectic, thesis clashing with antithesis to create superior synthesis. He doesn't just want to destroy the NCR, but absorb its strengths, using New Vegas civilization to temper his army's barbarism and forge a lasting empire. The Legion elevates itself from simple antagonist to a dark, internally consistent solution to wasteland chaos. While these major powers fought over the Western Wasteland, a different kind of conflict was brewing in the Commonwealth. The Institute, the boogeyman of Massachusetts. The Institute represents science divorced from ethics and intellect separated from empathy. Descended from MIT survivors who took refuge in underground facilities, they initially tried helping surface communities with early robotic synths. But fear and suspicion from uneducated wastelanders drove them back underground, where generations of isolation warped their mission. They came to see themselves as humanity's sole inheritors, adopting the motto "Mankind Redefined," while treating the surface world as a vast laboratory. Their greatest achievement was synthetic humans, synths, developed in 3 generations. Gen 1 and 2 were purely mechanical, but Gen 3 synths used pure pre-war DNA from kidnapped infant Sean to create fully biological beings physically indistinguishable from humans. With perfect infiltrators, the Institute treated the Commonwealth as an unethical experiment. They kidnapped wastelanders for FEV research, creating super mutants they simply released when experiments concluded. They replaced key individuals with synth spies to conduct long-term studies, like replacing farmer Roger Warwick to test modified crops. The Broken Mask incident in 2229, where a malfunctioning synth massacred people in Diamond City, confirmed the Wasteland's worst fears about synthetic infiltrators. Their most systematic sabotage was preventing unified government. When settlements tried forming the Commonwealth Provisional Government, the Institute used a synth to assassinate the delegates during the meeting. They kidnapped and replaced community leaders, creating the paranoia that destroyed the region's peacekeeping force, the Minutemen, through the Quincy Massacre. The infant Sean, kidnapped from Vault 111, was raised to become the Institute's director, known as Father. Brilliant, forward-thinking, and utterly devoid of empathy for surface dwellers. His final experiment was releasing the sole survivor from cryostasis to see how this old-world relic would react to the new one. The Institute's evil comes not from malice, but profound academic arrogance. Physical isolation underground led to complete moral isolation, where surface people became variables in ongoing experiments. They represent the dangers of scientific pursuit without ethics. But while the Institute manipulated from the shadows, other factions fought openly for their ideals. The Railroad. Operating as a secretive network, the Railroad has one unwavering purpose: liberating sentient synths from slavery. Named after the historical Underground Railroad, they use coded rail signs chalked on walls to mark dead drops and safe houses for agents and escaped synths they call runners. Led by the determined Desdemona, their inner circle includes Deacon, a master of disguise and intelligence, and paranoid but brilliant Tinker Tom handling communications. They operate from hidden headquarters in Old North Church catacombs with an inside man codenamed Patriot, helping synths escape from within the Institute. Their most controversial practice is memory wipes, erasing traumatic memories and implanting new ones to protect escaped synths and give them fresh starts. This raises profound questions about identity and free will, even among allies. The Railroad is caught between their primary enemy, the Institute, which hunts escapees with elite Courser agents, and the Brotherhood of Steel, who see all synths as dangerous technology requiring eradication. Their cause is undeniably noble but laser-focused. They're a single-issue organization with no broader plans for rebuilding the Commonwealth, feeding people, or establishing government. Their story questions whether it's more effective to fight focused battles for justice for the few or broader wars for survival of the many. While the Railroad fought for synthetic rights, another faction championed human solidarity. The Commonwealth Minutemen. If other factions represent grand ideologies and powerful institutions, the Minutemen represent a simple idea: ordinary people have a duty to protect each other. Named after colonial militias ready to fight at a minute's notice, they're a volunteer militia for mutual defense, founded around 2180. They gained renown defending Diamond City from super mutants and were instrumental in forming the Commonwealth Provisional Government, a promising alliance for unified governance. But the Institute's synth infiltrator massacred CPG delegates, destroying trust between settlements and causing collapse. After their unifying leader General Becker died, internal squabbles and betrayals tore the organization apart. The final blow came at the Quincy Massacre in 2287, when Gunner mercenaries besieged Quincy. Responding Minutemen were betrayed by their own officer Clint, who sold out his comrades. The Gunners overran the town, slaughtering inhabitants and utterly destroying the Minutemen's reputation. The sole survivor finds the last remnants in Concord's Museum of Freedom, led by Preston Garvey, a true believer broken by Quincy who watched his organization crumble and failed to protect civilians under his care. Riddled with depression and survivor's guilt, he sees the capable sole survivor as hope for the Minutemen's rebirth, immediately bestowing general rank while believing himself unfit to lead. The Minutemen represent purest idealism, voluntary mutual defense free of ambition and dogma. Their history shows both the immense power of this idea to inspire people and its fragility without strong leadership. They prove that while noble ideas can unite people, true leaders are needed to make those ideas reality in the harsh wasteland. But beyond these major Commonwealth powers, the wasteland teamed with smaller, more specialized groups, regional powers and specialists. The Mojave Desert was a crossroads where unique local factions carved out niches between major powers. The Kings in Freeside built their entire gang around Elvis Presley, with their leader, the King, adopting the icon's style and philosophy that every man is a king in his own right, acting as protectors and de facto government for Freeside's downtrodden inhabitants. The Great Khans represent tragedy and brutal survival, descendants of raiders repeatedly beaten down over centuries. Their culture, defined by hatred for the NCR. Born from the Bitter Springs Massacre, where NCR troops slaughtered their elderly, women, and children acting on faulty intelligence. This drives them into desperate alliance with Caesar's Legion seeking revenge over shared ideals. Nuka World's raider gangs show how even lawless groups develop ideologies. The operators led by siblings Mags and William Black are capitalists viewing raiding as business, valuing efficiency and profit. The pack under Alpha Male Mason embrace anarchic tribalism and survival of the fittest with animalistic culture and arena fights. Knights. The disciples, led by bloodthirsty Nisha, kill for pure pleasure, preferring intimate blade kills and decorating their headquarters with mutilated victims. Professional mercenaries filled various niches. The disciplined gunners with military hierarchy and standardized equipment, possibly descendants of Vault 75's genetically engineered child soldiers. Talon Company worked for mysterious benefactors hunting anyone with good karma to prevent civilization from taking root. Riley's Rangers provided heroic mapping and security services, making DC's ruins safer for everyone. The followers of the Apocalypse represented secular humanism, providing education and medical aid while believing in sharing knowledge freely to prevent past mistakes. Ironically, their idealism contributed to Caesar's Legion, since Edward Sallow was a follower before his transformation. The Responders in Appalachia formed immediately after the Great War, from first responders trying to help survivors, representing humanity's best impulses before being wiped out by the scorched plague. Even in the wasteland's chaos, art and joy survived in groups like the Atom Cats, peaceful power armor enthusiasts obsessed with 1950s greaser culture who saw armor as canvases for self-expression rather than weapons. While these groups represented human adaptation, others showed how the apocalypse spawned new forms of faith and fanaticism. Cults and true believers. When old certainties vanished, new and terrifying faiths rose to fill the void. The Unity was the Master's grand vision. The grotesquely mutated Richard Grey believed humanity's salvation lay in forced evolution into super mutants. The Children of the Cathedral served as his recruitment arm, a seemingly benevolent religion luring wastelanders into their church to be delivered to FEV conversion vats. The Children of Atom worship radiation itself, believing each atomic nucleus contains entire universes, and nuclear detonation, division, is sacred creation. Beginning in Megaton around an unexploded bomb, many possessed genetic mutations granting radiation immunity they see as divine blessing. By Fallout 4, they'd spread throughout the Commonwealth into Far Harbor, where their desire to spread radioactive fog makes them a major threat. But perhaps the most disturbing elements of the wasteland weren't organized factions at all, but individual monsters. The Boogeymen. The wasteland harbored serial killers and anomalous threats that proved human evil existed long before the bombs. The Fens Phantom operated in Boston's sewers, arranging victims' skeletons into grotesque art while taunting his detective pursuer through holotapes. The Nuka Killer drowned victims and placed bottle caps in their eye sockets. The Pint-Sized Slasher was a child killer whose urban legend inspired Halloween costumes before becoming horrifyingly real. Post-war, Pickman exclusively hunted raiders, using their blood and body parts for gruesome art in his gallery. A Lovecraft homage raising questions about whether monsters who kill monsters are heroes or different kinds of monsters. The mysterious Sickleman left headless victims and graffiti messages, possibly connected to Appalachia's Mothman cult. The Cabot family injected cosmic horror into the setting. Patriarch Lorenzo discovered an alien artifact in the 1890s, granting psychic powers and immortality but shattering his sanity. His family imprisoned him for over 400 years, harvesting serum from his blood to maintain their own immortality while he slowly went insane. These stories showed that ancient, incomprehensible evils existed long before atomic fire, and some forms of darkness transcend human understanding entirely. If you enjoyed this video, you need to see every Fallout state explained. Click it now.